This is everything you need to know about update 48 in Bloons TD 6. The main feature of the update is the brand new Spike Paragon called the Massive Munitions Factory. This Spike Paragon actually comes with a very high price tag of $800,000, and it is probably one of the strongest, if not the strongest Paragons in Bloons TD 6. Now the Spike Paragon actually does come with permanent spikes. Whenever you buy it, the entire track gets covered in these permanent spikes, and the main attack drops very strong super mines. The Spike Paragon comes with two abilities. The first one is an overclock-like ability, which when triggered makes the Spike Paragon drop spikes a lot faster. This ability is on a very short cooldown, as you guys are noticing, but it can only be used once per round. The second ability does a lot of damage, and it's actually quite the opposite from the first one. Whenever used, this ability launches landmines all across the track, and these landmines do an insane amount of damage. The catch with this ability is that it is on a super long cooldown, but just take a look at what it does to a fortified bat. This thing does a lot of damage. There's a brand new map called Spot Pits, and this one is a very interesting one because it's a beginner map, but it's also an extreme map at the same time. I say this because there's a secret on this map, and the way that you trigger the secret is by tapping a couple of these rocks. So you start with the bottom left one, then the bottom right one, then the top right one, and then the top middle one. You go back by tapping the bottom right one again, and you get this pop-up asking you if you want to make the map heaps harder. If you click yes, the map is going to transform into Tar Pits, a map from older BTD games. Now the difference with Tar Pits is that all 5 of these exits turn into entrances as well, and you're essentially defending 5 tracks at the same time. On top of this, you cannot place any type of towers inside of the pits, and judging by this difficulty, you guys can probably realize that this is the hardest map that we currently have in BTD 6, even harder than the hardest expert maps. Now in the shop, we have a brand new Adora skin called the Adora Skin, and this one is actually a bundle which is a crossover from BTD 6 and the Masters of the Universe, and it gives you a couple of things. If you don't have Adora unlocked, it's going to give you Adora, it's going to give you the new skins, it's going to give you 30 new powers, which are brand new powers just added into the game, a new banner, a new avatar, and a couple of super monkey insta monkeys. And if you guys are planning to get yourself this She-Ra prestige pack or any of the other packs, please don't forget to use my code EATANDREAD in the Bloons store. It really helps out the channel a lot. Now on to Rogue Legends. We have already mentioned some of these changes, but in case this is the first time that you guys are seeing them, there is a brand new XP shop in the main menu, which consists of permanent upgrades to your campaigns. You can get some amazing things like extra starting lives, extra starting cash. You can get discounts on all of your towers that you're buying throughout your game. You can essentially guarantee yourself that you're going to be getting legendary artifacts throughout your game. You can make the final boss a little easier by reducing its health. You can increase your starting artifact power, allowing you to bring more artifacts into your runs. You can increase your party size by 5. You can make your mini games and mini bosses a little bit easier, and just a bunch of other stuff, including actual monkey knowledge points, which you can bring with your campaigns. Now the entire game mode of Rogue Legends has actually been reworked a little bit, so you guys might be noticing some new bloon encounters, like for example this disappearing red bloon, which reminds me of FaZe a little bit. There's this white bloon type of encounter which I've tried, and it actually makes white bloons explode and slow your towers. This one makes the bloons spawn a little bit denser. There is a Moab, which I have no idea what it does, a regrow encounter, a purple encounter, a ZOMG encounter. I don't even know what these guys do over here. And on top of this, they've added a bunch of new artifacts. They've reworked existing artifacts. They reduced the total amount of stages that you play to 4. And that's not even all the changes in Rogue Legends, so instead of talking about everything, we're just gonna try it out in a separate video. There are 2 new quests in BTD 6. The first one is called She-Ra to the Rescue, which is gonna give you 3 of these new powers that they just added to the game, called the Sword of Protection, so you guys can try it out without actually having to buy it. And the second one is called Projectile Go Round. This one is really cool because it makes the projectiles randomly switch with the projectiles of some other placed monkeys. So I don't even know how this one is gonna play out, but we're definitely gonna be checking out and making a video on it. Now when it comes to balance changes, there are a lot of them. So let's start with the Dart Monkey and the Sharpshooter, where its projectile speed got increased by a little bit, but more importantly, the attack cooldown got reduced. So this guy is just becoming a powerhouse update after update. The Boomerang changelog is actually huge, but it kind of boils down to a couple of small things. The Morglaives is a little bit cheaper and has a little bit less spears, and when it comes to the Glaive Lord, they're trying to shift power away from the main attack and shift it more into the orbiting attack. So for example, the main attack is now going to have less damage overall and less damage versus ceramic balloons, but the orbiting glaives are going to do a little bit more damage, and they're going to orbit a little bit faster. They've taken away some bonus damage versus Moabs, and they've taken away some bonus damage versus ceramics from the orbit, so I'm not exactly sure how this whole thing is going to play out, but it does look like a slight nerf to the Glaive Lord to me. Also, just an honorable mention that the Blade Shooter's range is now absolutely huge for some reason. Some small changes happening to the bottom pad I this where the cryo cannon's damage is getting reduced by 1, goes from 2 to 1. The icicle's damage is exactly the same, remains at 2, but the shard damage from the icicles goes from 2 to 3. So they're trying to bump this tower up the rankings. Talking about the Arctic Wind, the price is now a little bit cheaper, goes from 2.8 to 2.5, but you get some of the price back on the 4th tier. And this is my favorite change, I think, where they, in the last update, they added this passive Moab slow onto the absolute 0, and it was 20%, and now they're increasing it to 30%. That's a really cool change, I think. Now I wanted to mention this Bloons software change where it now does a little bit less damage versus Moab's, goes from 5 to 4, but the more important change is the 240 glue strike, which now when cross-patted with the top cross-pat increases the extra damage the Bloons take from 2 to 3. That's a very interesting change. Now this tower is an honorable mention because in the last update this tower achieved a 1 tower chimps, which is kind of ridiculous, and now in this update they're nerfing the thing that allowed it to do the 1 tower chimps, which is the bombing gram damage, and it's now getting reduced from 30 to 25. Now you guys know that the Hydra rocket pods projectiles explode on contact, and this explosion damage is now getting increased from 1 to 2, so not sure how significant that's gonna be, but that's a step in the right direction for sure. And then look at this guy, the Ray of Doom, now getting its damage increased from 25 to 30. That is a 20% extra damage for 0 extra cost. I wanted to quickly mention this wizard change, by the way, which is now seeing the base price of the wizard getting reduced from 325 to 250. Now these savings are actually getting added back into the top hat upgrades, but the implications of this change are that on chimps mode and especially on more difficult maps, now you get a lot more versatility in the way that you can start them. Also some Moab damage being shifted around with the top hat arcane spike now dealing plus 6 Moab damage, the wall of fire dealing plus 2 Moab damage, but the archmage's wall of fire Moab bonus is getting reduced by 2. And just an honorary mention with the Magus Perfectus, which it has this metamorphosis ability which was on a super long cooldown, and now that cooldown is getting reduced from 120 to 90, and their explanation is that, well, people are not exactly using this guy versus bosses, so they want you to kind of start doing that. Now they really seem to be doubling down on this alchemist change where the rubber to gold's attack starting from last update can now essentially remove properties from Bloons. Now the changes that they made in this specific update are that the golden potion's attack rate is getting reduced from 5 seconds to 2, the splash radius is getting increased from 14 to 21, and if you go for the top crosspat, the 104, it actually benefits the rubber to gold potion. They're also increasing the duration of this potion, and I actually think that while their idea is to have this guy remove properties from Bloons, look at what it's actually doing. Every single balloon on the screen is golden. This thing makes so much money now, it's crazy. Some small changes happening with the top hat Mermonkey where the Abyss Dweller's price caught significantly, actually goes from 2.1k to $1,300, but a huge chunk of that price is being added back with the Abyssal Warrior. Now there is a significant nerf happening to this upgrade, the Symphonic Resonance, which previously used to be able to grab BFBs and now it can no longer do this, and I'm just questioning if they should put back the old price tag back because this is a really serious nerf. Now going to a Spike Factory for a second, the Spike Storm's price is getting increased from 6 to 7,000, so might not sound that important, but this is actually only a targeted nerf to the tier 4 because you do get those $1,000 back when you upgrade to a carpet of spikes. Another interesting change is the fact that the deadly spikes are now getting some extra damage, goes from 2 to 3, and these guys actually work really nicely as a standalone tower, so it's gonna be fun to try them out. This is actually such a niche and small change, but I'm actually gonna try it because it sounds fun. But you guys know that the primary mentoring and the primary expertise give cooldown reduction to all primary towers. Well, those numbers are now getting increased, and it's 15% for the tier 4 and 25% of cooldown reduction if you have the primary expertise on screen. I wanted to quickly mention this beast handler change, which is actually hilarious. You guys know that the top hat beasts can actually one-shot Moab class balloons, right? Well, the RB cap got moved from 500k to 1 million. Essentially what this means is that if you buy the Megalodon, the upper limit on what the HP of the balloon that it can one-shot has now been moved. So for example, if you send in a bat which is around 207, it is still gonna be able to, I guess barely, but one-shot it. If I remember correctly, this limit previously used to be at about 170 or 172. Well, now around 207 is the last one because if you send a bad balloon around 208, the Megalodon is not gonna be able to one-shot. So that is what this cap increase means. And talking about some of the heroes, Striker Jones is actually getting some decent buffs to its main attack, as funny as it sounds. Now the bazooka attack pushes balloons back, which you guys might be able to notice. It's actually getting a nice damage improvement throughout all his levels, but at the cost of the concussive shell stun, which is being lowered at these higher levels. Now Oben is getting two changes. The first one is that the storm raid buff is now getting reduced, so these storms are not going to be created as often under the Open buff. But this one is actually cooler, the Jungle Bounty buff, where he now gives extra cash for all the Jungle Bounty druids, and this amount is getting increased from 20 to 35%, so they're actually trying to make Open a farming alternative. Etienne is getting a very cool new ability. He now buffs the range of all towers in his range. So for example, I'm going to start dragging in this Dwarf Monkey, and as you guys can see, as soon as it enters Etienne's range, it's going to get the range buff itself. This buff is 10% at level 2 of Eti, and then it goes up to 20% when Eti reaches level 16. And let's get it off with Sada, which is getting nerfed throughout almost all of her levels, starting from level 1 going up to level 14. Her attack cooldown is being increased throughout all of these levels, which basically means that she is attacking a little bit slower. So with that being said, those were the more important changes in update 48. I'm going to link the patch notes below so you guys can take a look at everything, but that's going to be it for this one. Thank you guys so much for watching the video. Don't forget to use code ETHANREAD in the Bloons store, and I'm going to see you all in the next one.